Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you to this Committee of the Whole meeting on November the 4th, 2025. This is the 13th meeting of our Committee of the Whole, and I'd like to bring this meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. My name is Councillor Isabel Ann McCrae, and I will be residing as the chair this evening. I'd like to begin the meeting by calling upon Councillor Barry Smith to move the adoption of our agenda.
November 4th, 2025 be adopted as presented.
All those in favor? That passes. Item 3, I just want to remind all councillors, if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest and general nature thereof, now is the time to bring those forward. Are there any? Being none, if during our meeting you have a disclosure, please bring it forward so it can be documented in our meetings. We have no scheduled public meeting, number 4. So we'll move right through to number 5. Everyone has had the opportunity to review the minutes of October the 7th, 2025. Is there any discussions, questions in regards to the minutes? Not being any, I would like to call upon our worship, Mayor Judy Brown, to read the motion.
That the minutes of the regular Committee of the Whole meeting held on October the 7th, 2025 be approved.
All those in favor? That passes unanimously. We're going to move on to, we have 2 delegations this evening of great importance. The first one is the Climate Change Advisory Panel, and Kirsten Browse will be giving us a presentation in regards to that. The second will be given from the President and CEO of the Perth and Smith Falls District Hospital, Michael Cowan. Just a reminder to both speakers, you have 10 minutes, followed by questions from our council. Welcome, Kirsten, and if you'd like to begin with your PowerPoint, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Council, for having me here tonight. Before I jump in, I'll introduce myself briefly. So my name's Kirsten Browse. I moved here with a young family almost 5 years ago. I've been with the Climate Change Advisory Panel for a couple years now. And in my day job, I work with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. I started there in the Municipal Asset Management Program. And I mention that really because that work, more than maybe anything else that I've worked on, really gave me a deep appreciation for the tough job that you have around this table, specifically in balancing the need to deliver services to the people of Perth today, but also to plan into the future to make sure you can do that in perpetuity. And so I mention that very specifically because I want you to know that it is with that lens that I think about climate action planning, because I know that is top of mind for you. And I do think that there's an important way that these things dock together. And so I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about how we hope to do that in the next few months. So I think we can go to the next slide. Oh, I have my own clicker. Amazing. Maybe. Okay,
There we go.
Okay. So there's a number of things that excite me about climate action planning, and I want to tell you about a few of them. There's a bunch of different reasons that communities do this work. One, and it's kind of in the title and fairly self-evident, of course, part of the reason we do this is to identify opportunities to reduce emissions in our communities. But importantly, and I want to underline the other half of that bullet, is doing that while meeting other town needs and obligations. it's not a single lens. It's a lens that looks at the obligations of this council and takes that into consideration as we do some of this planning. It also allows us to track progress and to celebrate the town's leadership towards targets. So I think most of you know that Perth was really an early leader in climate action planning. We have a plan that went from 2017 to 2022. And one of the first things I did when I got here was read that plan and look at some of the actions that are identified in it. And I really think we've done a lot of what we planned in there, but we've never taken the time to go back and see what that has done towards the targets that we set for ourselves. And so I think there's a real opportunity, hopefully, to tell a really compelling story there. Of course, one of the major ways that we reduce emissions is by reducing our energy usage. And when we do that, there is, of course, energy cost savings. And so that's another important reason that we go and we do this work and we look for those opportunities. My fourth bullet there's lots of good reasons, as you can see. The fourth one being, we want to be prepared with a plan so that when funding opportunities become available, staff is in a really good position to be able to make the case to the provincial and the federal governments and other funders that this grant opportunity fits within existing town planning, and they're much better able to go and get that grant money. And then finally, and I was reading ahead to Nev's presentation you're going to see in a minute, people in Perth care about climate change, and this is a great way to be able to respond to citizens' concerns. We're also in really good company in doing this type of work. So who else is doing this? Over 500 municipalities across the country have or are developing a climate plan, including the town of Perth, as you know, or emissions inventories, including 161 municipalities in Ontario. So in Lanark County alone, as you probably know, the county has both a community and a corporate climate action plan. Smiths Falls is in the middle of developing a community and a corporate climate action plan. Tay Valley has had a climate action plan since 2020. Carleton Place has identified their climate actions towards the Lanark County targets and plan. And Mississippi Mills is in the midst of developing a plan right now. And so, as you can see, very much kind of keeping up with what has become standard for a lot of municipalities in this space. Most of the time that municipalities do this work, they work with this milestone framework from the Partners of Climate Protection. It's a very basic framework that's not going to be very groundbreaking for you, I don't imagine. Milestone 1 is you set your emissions inventory, then you set your targets, you develop a plan. Milestone 4, you implement your plan. Milestone 5, you track progress against it. As I mentioned, and as you know, we have a plan that went from 2017 to 2022. And as I've already said, we took a lot of the actions that were outlined in that plan. And so it really brings us here. We're deep into this framework. We're really at that milestone 5 stage where now it's time to monitor what progress have we made and where are we at in implementing those actions, and then what's next? Like, where are the next opportunities to align opportunities for emission reductions with our asset management planning, our long-term infrastructure planning. So just a little bit more on what that previous plan includes. There's an emissions inventory there. There are targets and there are actions to reduce emissions. And as with all plans, and as you know very well as members of council, plans don't determine your budget decisions, right? But they do identify investment options that are consistent with your objectives that staff can then put into a budget for you to approve as you go. And that's the same with a climate change action plan. One notable success from the previous plan that I think might be an interesting illustration for you is the Honeywell Energy Performance Contract. And so this was identified in the Climate Action Plan as an opportunity. And from what I know was followed through on. It was a program where Honeywell Energy Company was willing to provide capital upfront to conduct building and retrofits that generated cost savings that went to repay that capital, and then eventually cost savings returned to the town of Perth. So this is a great example of identifying opportunities by doing climate action planning and then being able to see those benefits, ultimately financial cost savings to the town. So we are in the midst of undertaking this work. And so the climate CCAP, Climate Change Advisory Panel, is working with staff to update this plan, leveraging grants, hopefully some from Enbridge, some from Lanark County, using the same consultant that Smiths Falls is currently using, and getting them to assess our corporate emissions against that 2015 baseline year and the 2022 targets, and getting them to identify those investment opportunities that are going to reduce emissions and meet other town objectives like finding cost savings and prolonging the life of our infrastructure. So this is where there's that opportunity for staff to use that plan to identify grant opportunities and other investments to include in budgets that would ultimately need your approval. I put this here just as a bit of a comparison. The important piece that I wanted to flag for you here is that first plan was both a corporate and a community scale inventory and plan. So it looked both at the emissions that the corporation, Town of Perth, is directly accountable for through its services and its buildings, as well as the broader community, so residents and their transportation and in their homes. So that's obviously a much broader scope. Our proposal for this new plan is to really focus on corporate emissions specifically. And the rationale for that is that the Lanark County plan includes community-wide emissions, which includes the Town of Perth. And really, some of those community scale interventions are much better done at that county level. And so the recommendation is that at the town level, we focus on our corporate emissions and look for opportunities there. Okay, I think I'm almost done here. So as I'm sure you're familiar, the mandate of the CCAP is to provide climate change mitigation and adaptation best practices and recommendations to council. I would say one of our key objectives, and especially in the last few years as I've joined, is to really find ways to provide that advice in a way that's strongly linked to your business processes and priorities, and to really build that link as much as we can. And it's really this objective that led us to make the recommendation to council a few months ago to include this update to the climate action plan as part of your strategic plan. So this work is already part of the mandate of the CCAP, but we really hope that by including it in the strategic plan, we can build that stronger alignment between your priorities and what CCAP does as a committee of council. And with 11 seconds left, I will stop there and welcome your questions.
Thank you very much, Kirsten, for giving us a synopsis of the Perth Climate Plan journey. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Bird.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for that presentation. A couple of observations and then perhaps a question. This, to me, has been one of the most useful climate change presentations that I've seen in my tenure last year and last term and this term, because it does acknowledge where we are as a municipality financially and otherwise. And I think it's got good, strong roots connected to us and where we are and what municipalities are actually dealing with. So I'm pleased with that. I am very pleased that you mentioned that it's not a single lens. It is a consideration. The question I have is, I noticed that the committee talks about mitigation and adaptation. When we've been dealing with the asset management side of climate change, the word resilience features in that as well. And I don't know if we can marry that up to help it marry it up to what the town is required to do now as part of asset management planning. So mitigation, resilience, and adaptation. That was my kind of a question.
Yeah. It's a great one. And I think both are critically important. I think it's a bit of a, I think you should do both, if I'm being totally honest. I don't know if it makes sense to do them at the same time. I would be happy to come back and talk to you about the opportunities for grants to do climate adaptation planning and build it into your asset management planning processes at a later council meeting, because there's lots of opportunity to do that right now. And I think there are many communities that are doing combined mitigation and adaptation planning. I think we're maybe a little bit down the road to include adaptation in this plan process that we're kicking off with the consultant. But I really appreciate the question, and I'm happy to talk more about opportunities for adaptation planning down the road.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It puts things very clearly in logical order. So that's my question would be, a suggestion was made to council previously about putting the climate committee's objectives in our strategic plan. But at the time, we rejected it because we didn't have adequate information. Would you like to see what's in the report synthesized and put into the strategic plan?
I think the opportunity, and we could do it a few different ways. There's the opportunity for council to consider the undertaking that we are doing, which is developing or updating the Perth Climate Action Plan as an outcome in a strat plan this year. Or we could wait till we get the climate plan and see where we're at on targets and have something that's a bit more goal-based and bring that into a strategic plan. I'm quite open to how council might want to approach that. I think the objective that I would love to put on the table for council to consider is finding ways to bring together the work that the CCAP is doing with the work that council is doing in whatever way there's appetite for.
Any other questions? If I may indulge, I would like to ask some questions. As a member of the BIA and also sitting on the chamber, and now most recently, now I'm on the committee for the Festival of Maples, I'm always concerned about these large events and the garbage that is created from these large events. Would you share with those that are here this evening how the greening event is progressing and what are your goals moving forward in regards to that?
Good question. There are a few members of the community that had brought this question of an event greening policy or recommendation to the CCAP a number of months ago. There has been limited capacity, I would say, on the CCAP to take that and really turn it into fulsome recommendations that we were comfortable standing behind. So I was just having some conversations with said community members about the best way to bring that to council. And so I think that will have to be a conversation that we have around the best path forward on that. I will say that looking at ways of greening events, especially from a corporate emissions perspective, is a great opportunity for us to reduce the garbage, especially the organics that go to landfill and that turn into methane. And so whether that would end up being part of the climate plan or whether that could just be tackled as a separate initiative, I think I don't have the clear path forward, but I know it's an ongoing conversation.
And I just have one other question. This council made a motion that there would be student engagement on your committee. And I just wondered, with the Upper Canada School Board and the Catholic School Board of Eastern Ontario, is your committee moving forward with that? And what are your methodologies in terms of recruitment for new members? These are ambitious goals you have, and you need really active members to move them forward. So what are your plans in that direction?
Yeah, it's a great question. We were really excited about having student engagement on the committee. So far, our recruitment efforts have, which included, I think, staff posting a few different times through our normal channels, and Michael may want to talk more about that, have had limited success both for student members and other members. For student members, we had a few really keen students lined up who attend school in town but don't live in town. And so that's been a really limiting factor so far in terms of being able to recruit students onto the committee.
Thank
Sure,
you.
I'll just expand on that. We did, council did modify the terms of reference after that, so and then we re-advertised for any students, as long as they were attending school in Perth, we advertised through the normal channels and also reached out directly to the schools, but there was no further interest from any students.
Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation and the work that you are doing towards climate change here in our community of Perth. Thank you very much, Kirsten.
Thank you.
And I would ask that Councillor Barry Smith bring forward the motion.
As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth receive for information the presentation from Kirsten Browse, Climate Change Advisory Panel, Perth's Climate Plan Journey, as presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting on November 4th, 2025.
All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Our next presenter needs no introduction. Michael Cowan is the president and CEO of our own hospital and the Smith Falls District Hospital. Welcome, Michael. We look forward to your presentation. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and for members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here on this, my 4th anniversary in my tenure as the CEO of your local hospital. So it's a pleasure to be able to give you an update and to also thank you sincerely on behalf of our staff, physicians, and volunteers for the generous support through our Core Capital campaign. So as I've reported previously, we have a strategic plan, which was updated a couple of years ago, but slightly after my arrival. And as I've said to council on many times, do you want me to stop while you get the timer going, or are you going to give me an extra minute? One? Okay. Oh, okay. A couple of seconds. Okay. I feel like I'm Jack Bauer looking at the bomb's going to go off. So for us, obviously, these are very important high-level goals. But for us, and for me in particular, it's taking those lofty goals and distilling them into practical, measurable objectives every year. So this year, we're going to be focusing on improving our nursing model of care. So I know that many of you know that nurses are regulated health professionals that are bound by their college, but also you can appreciate in a large organization, getting everybody to go in the same direction at the same time is a constant challenge. And our goal is to essentially standardize the way that care is provided for our patients to improve the way we articulate patient-centered care. So this is where we're creating standard work for nurses so that they focus on standard objectives when they're rounding, not just on responding to call bells, for example, but asking patients how are they doing with their positioning, their pain, etc., and supporting them as they learn new things like advancements in wound care, and also taking a nod to our patients to ensure that they're included. And feedback that we've received is that patients want more information about their care. So we're going to be updating our patient boards that are at the head or at the foot of each of patient beds that tell the caregiver who's your caregiver today. If you prefer to be called Mike instead of Michael, what is your discharge goals and objectives, et cetera, et cetera. So that's part of how we're embedding the patient experience directly into the care we provide every day. And our way of enhancing patient engagement and experience. And then lastly, we're going to be advancing our expansion plans for the hospital, which I'll talk about in more detail in a little bit. So normally when I come at this time of year, I'd be talking to you about how we have been hit by a very nasty early flu season. And I'm very happy to say that up until yesterday, when my entire senior team was stricken with the bug that's going around, we have escaped an early flu season. So it's right on time, which is nice because our hospital's been at or above capacity pretty much solidly through the balance of the winter, through the summer, and into this fall. A big part of that is the challenges that we face with access to long-term care. So on any given day, anywhere between 35 and 40 patients out of about 100 are stuck in our hospital waiting to go to long-term care. And that's a capacity issue that is faced across the province. And it's particularly acute in our region and for our hospital. And so, business is booming. We have lots of new doctors and surgeons that are also continuing to put their best foot forward to serve the community, and it's resulting in higher than 100% occupancy pretty much every day. In terms of our services, we've had good success in the last year recruiting. I'm sure many of you remember the summer of 2022 when we were forced to close one of our emergency departments, the Perth Emergency, because of a sudden and unexpected staffing crisis. We've seen positive recovery. So for the most part, regular full-time positions have been easier to recruit. I just participated in our staff orientation yesterday, and full house, lots of RNs, RPNs, and allied health professionals. Where we do see challenges when people go on leave, it is very difficult to hire part-time or temporary full-time positions. So we still have work to do there. If you've been to the Perth campus, you'll see that there's a construction which is nearly complete on our 3rd floor to renovate our nursing station. And in Smith Falls, we've had a complete update of our resuscitation area in our emergency department, which gives us access to the latest standards for airflow regulation and treating patients that need critical care. And then recently, we've also improved access to MRI. We were able to get funding to allow us to double the amount of time that MRI services are offered. So now, as of about 2 weeks ago, we're running 16 hours a day, Monday to Friday. Okay, that'll be really helpful. And we did that by securing additional funds. The year that ended in the fiscal 24-25, we had some great positive changes. So Council may remember my talking about funding challenges that we have at our hospital. We are not fully funded to the extent we should be. And last year we were successful in securing an additional 17.1 million to essentially balance our books, which we're very proud of. Most of that was one time, and we're working very closely right now with the government and our regulators to make that permanent going forward. I did say that one of our strategic objectives is to advance the expansion planning. So there's 3 stages that we're bound to follow. These are ministry rules that we're following. And roughly speaking, there's approval that's required at each stage. So right now we've passed the first stage in stage 1, which is early planning, and that's called the pre-capital submission. It's one of the first things actually that I worked on when I came to this hospital. And we're actually going to be starting the next phase, which is called master plan and master program. So if you think of an analogy, I'm dating myself, but we used to say, describe the object, it's bigger than a bread box. Okay, if you're doing charades, people will know that game. So that's what the pre-capital tells us. So we're committed to 2 sites. We had an engineering study done that says that the Perth campus is best to be redeveloped on a new site or greenfield. And generally speaking, here's what we think it would look like. The master plan actually incorporates engagement from patients, staff, and the community to begin to articulate more specifically what's going to be needed. So this is like specific services that would be demanded, the benefits and detriments of different options, contemplates the details, like if you rebuild the Perth campus, what happens to the GWM, and also would be the part where we would start to talk about if there's a site available locally, where would it be and how would we acquire it. So that's to come early in Q1 of the next fiscal year. So in terms of our core capital campaign, and I can't thank you enough on behalf of the people of Perth and the region for your financial support, we did complete our electronic medical record project, which went live last December. If you've been to our hospital anytime around that, you will know that it was chaos, as is expected for a big implementation like that. Having been through it several times, even though it was quite chaotic, it was probably one of the smoothest implementations that I've been a part of. And we're actually starting to settle into normalcy to look at ways to enhance and leverage the technology. So you can see, many of you may know the individual whose back is faced whose back is faced to us. That is the venerable Dr. Alan Drummond, who is taken his training and learned how to use the system and has been doing very successfully. And some of the money that you've provided have helped furnish some of the equipment that you see pictured in the picture. So these are the workstation on wheels, the technology, that the scanners, the instrumentation, and the different technology now that is commonplace in most places and is now commonplace right here at home at our local hospital. So on behalf of our patients, our families, our staff, and our volunteers, I want to thank you for your ongoing support. And we know it's budget season, so we do request that you continue to keep us in your minds as you plan your budget for next year, so that we can continue with our expansion plans and also help support the refurbishment of capital equipment going forward into our expansion. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to take any questions that council may have.
Okay, the floor is open to questions. Go ahead, Councillor Bird.
Thank you, through the chair. And I know I'm probably going to ask how long's the length of string question, but just to put things in proportion, I don't think there's any of us that would argue against we want the new hospital here. But just at this very early stage, timelines from even the perspective of the requirement of the public to the hospital to raise at its foundation money that's required. We're looking 2 or 3 terms of council. This is the sort of timeline that's involved in having us a new hospital.
So from where we are today, the best case scenario would be 5 to 6 years, which would be optimistic. The average would be 8 to 9 years based on where we are today if there's no hiccups. So that gives you sort of the general planning window, but it's also why we started to work with our hospital foundation now to begin to get the structure needed to support a campaign of this magnitude. The devil will be in the details. We need to do the master planning, but it wouldn't be at all a surprise if the total cost of the new project was in the $40 to $50 million. If the ask from the community would be $40 to $50 million to be raised, that would represent a project that was probably in the $300 to $400 million range total cost. So we need to start early. We need to do it properly, and that's why we're starting now.
I appreciate that. As I said, just trying to get that out early.
And I appreciate that because as I think you may have mentioned before the meeting, the minute you talk about a new hospital, I'm sure I'll get a call tomorrow saying I was driving down Drummond Street and I was just wondering where the new hospital is. So it takes care and time is needed. And that's why a big part of this next stage, the master planning, involves community engagement, because we are committed to 2 sites and there's opportunities not just to redevelop the Perth campus, but also size services and potentially do renovations at Smith Falls to support the hospital for the future. You're welcome.
Go ahead, Your Worship.
What would you say over the last year has been your greatest challenge in being CAO, making sure the hospital runs smoothly?
Well, I can say it's definitely not dealing with local municipalities. It's been wonderful. Nothing? Not even a smile? Thank you. I think our biggest challenge, there's several. I think we have not fully emerged from the health human resource crisis. So in spite of the fact that we've seen clear signs of improvement, staffing, particularly for those temporary part-time and temporary full-time positions, remains a significant challenge. And there's financial pressure that goes with that because you hear about in the news agency staffing. So we do, when we have somebody, let's say, has medical leave and they're off for 18 months because they've had surgery. If we can't recruit that, we have to bring somebody in on agency to replace that. So that remains one of the primary perennial challenges, but we're getting through it. So I think the other piece that's connected to that is funding. So it's very difficult to plan and execute on even, never mind just the expansion, but just keeping the hospital current with the equipment that we have when we're running deficits. And we have an excellent case. We're demonstrated to be one of the most efficient hospitals in our peer group, which is the medium-sized hospital peer group. And so it's clearly to us, from our perspective, it's a funding problem, not an efficiency problem. So those would be, I think, the 2 major challenges, which is why we're very proud of the work that we did last year to basically balance. But it's going to be an ongoing challenge to ensure that those revenues are actually embedded in our base going forward.
Thank you. I thought that's what you'd say. So I get the impression from sitting on the hospital board that funding, there's sometimes special plans for funding, like the one we currently got money for renewing infrastructure, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But I get the impression that sometimes this funding is sort of comes as a surprise that there's not a definite plan.
Yeah, it can be. So the MRI funding to run to 16 hours, we had requested it and we got it this year, but there's usually no signals. You don't get a lot of runway. Usually what happens is that you get a letter on a Friday at 4 o'clock saying you've been funded for something. For the most part, though, I think the ministry does a pretty good job telegraphing. So particularly with infrastructure, like the hospital infrastructure funding, They do a good job to maintain a list of our inventory. But to your point, whether this year we get 100,000 or 1 million on infrastructure, we don't know until we get a letter. Yeah.
Any other questions of Michael? I have one, Michael. I'm wondering, surrounding municipalities, are they as supportive as we are here in Perth in
Yeah,
terms
they-
of contributing?
Yes, they
towards-
have. They have been. Yes, we have excellent support. And again, it's budget cycle, so I've been speaking to them as I'm speaking to you. But Rideau Lake, Smith Falls, Lanark County, Tay Valley, etc. So we have a list of core supporters that have been with us from the beginning, and we couldn't be more grateful for their commitment.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the incredible work that the staff do at the Perth and Smith Falls District Hospital.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much.
Having heard from Micah, we'll have Councillor Barry Smith. Would you please move the motion?
What number
Oh,
is this?
my apologies, my apologies. Your worship, Judy Brown, you sit on that board. Let's have you read the motion.
Anything else? As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth receive for information the presentation from Michael Cohen, President and CEO, Perth and Smith Falls District Hospital, Core Capital Campaign and Hospital Update as presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting on November the 4th, 2025.
Thank you, Judy, and my apologies. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you and thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to item number 7, correspondence. And we have one item under correspondence, 7.1-1, being the Perth and District Union Library Community Needs Assessment. So everyone has had an opportunity to read that needs assessment. It's quite extensive. Are there any questions or comments in regards to that? Go
I
ahead.
just have a comment. The survey is incredibly thorough.
Yeah.
But one impression I got was that people are very pleased with the library, the staff, the services that are offered. There are some things that they would like to see added. But the other thing is that compared to other municipalities of this size, this library is underfunded, as has been the case for a number of years. I don't know how that could change, but it's unfortunate.
Any other comments? Questions? I would ask, as Councillor Gary Waterfield is not here this evening, Councillor Barry Smith, would you please read the motion?
As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth receive for information the Perth and District Union Library Community Needs Assessment from Erica Heeson, CEO, Chief Librarian, Perth and District Union Library.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. All those in favor? That passes. Thank you. So we're going to move on now to item number 8, staff reports. And we have a budget foundations update and engagement summary. And we are going to have Nev John to come forward and give a PowerPoint presentation. This, as you know, is in preparation for budget deliberations that we're going to be going into very shortly. Thank you, Nev. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to try to work this out. So today I just wanted to go through some of the items that kind of are the foundation for what will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. There are things that I know I've heard at other meetings that just to have another clarification or people had forgotten about. So I just thought if we could start with that now, we wouldn't have to take the time during the budget deliberations to really go through it again. So the first thing, if I can use this. Oh, is it out? Okay. Well, then, okay. That's okay. You can bring it up. That's no problem. I do have paper copies as well, so we can go through it together as well. I don't know if you wanted to do that.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
It's ready to go.
Thank you. So yeah, the first couple of slides are really just going through again what we went through in August, which was going through the budget objections and assumptions and the budget principles. So really nothing new here. I just wanted to have it up at the forefront with everyone again. So I don't think we need to go through those slides really unless there's any questions. If you go to the next slide, please, and then the next slide. This is just a refresher. I know that it had come up in the last meeting, so I wanted to just have it out there. The budget principles, I think that's the main focus I would want everyone to be aligned on as we go into budget deliberations. So if you go to the next slide, please, and then the next slide. So these are the main budget principles that everything's kind of on the foundation of. So one is to maintain service levels as they currently are. Two is to make sure we're using our reserves and our debt strategically. The next is to prioritize our capital renewal over expansion and just ensuring that our user fees are really reflecting cost recovery. And we're making as much as we can for the costs that we're spending. So that was it in regards to the budget principles. The next portion that I wanted to talk about was the citizen engagement activities that kind of went around the budget and what we had heard through those activities and how that kind of will come to play when we talk about budget in a few weeks as well. The next slide. So the two major activities that we went through was one, I did a coffee time with Nev where people could come from the community and talk to me about the budget and any concerns that they may have. And the second was we provided more information on the budget on the website in regards to the budget and kind of where money was going, how taxes are calculated and things like that, as well as putting in a more detailed budget survey just to get more engagement that way. Fine. So for the budget survey, we had 70 responses, more than last year was 17, still not a major part of our population, but I think it's nice to see that it was a bit more of an engagement and hopefully every year it will increase from that. The survey period was from October 7th to the 20th. Again, it was on the Engage Perth platform. I also had paper copies for anyone who came to talk to me at Coffee Time with Nev who hadn't done the survey, so some people had done that that way as well. And so really the purpose of the survey was really to get more perspectives on, you know, how the community was feeling on the level of service they were receiving right now, their priorities, and kind of what their tax trade-offs would be in regards to whether they wanted to see decreases in service to have a lower tax rate, or if they were fine with what they were paying and what they would want to pay more money for, et cetera. So the next slide really just goes through a kind of a snapshot of who was completing the survey. So most of them were between the ages of 55 and 65, and most of them were residents for over 10 years and owned their own property. Next slide. So the key takeaways from the budget survey were that the top priorities were roads, safety, and recreation. There was a tax tolerance and there was a moderate willingness to pay a small amount for meaningful increases. There was a strong preference to maintain current standards and current service levels, particularly with roads and winter maintenance. And the major themes that came out of it were just making sure that, you know, we were taking accountability, we were using efficiencies where possible, and just looking at long-term planning. This was more in regards to what was the order of importance on things that mattered the most. And as you can see, the major one was road maintenance and improvements, and went from there. This is another way of just where the people who had completed their survey wanted to see where they would be able to willing to invest more funds. So the largest is that kind of greeny area. So that was just to kind of show the different scale for the different areas. So this was more a question that was asked in regards to whether residents would be open to having service levels decreased in regards to having, you know, a lower tax rate, and the majority were not supportive of reducing core or quality of life services. And these are just open-ended feedback that we received through the survey. So just things that are on people's minds that I wanted to make sure that were included as well. Next slide. So the next one was the Coffee with Nev. I would say I probably had around 15 individuals come and talk to me during that session. All were really on the last sessions that we had, and a lot of them were just drop-ins. So the key themes that came up out of that discussion was really just being transparent, and residents really wanting transparency, wanting to know where money was being allocated, where their tax money was spent, and just knowing the difference between what was spent on operating and what was actually spent on capital. A lot of the individuals I talked to were open to having a split between this is the amount that they're paying in regards to the operations of the town, and this is the amount that's being set aside for having a capital levy to show that these were going to go towards solely capital projects as well. The next was, sorry, we can go back to that slide. Thank you. So the other hot topics, again, the same thing that came out of the survey were roads. So just looking at road maintenance, you know, and making sure that we're repaving and repairing any of the deteriorated streets that we have. Financial stability was something that also came up. So kind of wondering where we really are in regards to the financial position and the infrastructure needs that we have coming down the pipeline as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Climate change was something that came up as well, really in regards to how budget can contribute to, you know, moving forward climate change needs, and that conversation to say, you know, it needs to be in the strategic plan and figuring out how to align moving the dial with climate change and how to include those priorities. And then as well as just development. So there's a lot of different sides. A lot of residents wanted to see development move. Other residents wanted to make sure that we were only allowing developers that came in that kind of fit with the, I guess, the landscape of what everyone thought Perth should look like, and just making sure we encouraged responsible growth and utilizing the lands that we have as much as possible. So the next section of the presentation was really to go over, I know in August I came in here saying that we looked at the asset management plan and that it wasn't really feasible. So we were going to come back and talk about, take a look at it, kind of look at what the priorities were, and kind of see where we can move some of our assets and our management plan to make it more wholesome and more realistic in regards to a plan that we can move forward with. So if you go to the next slide. So again, these were the same as our budget principles. So maintaining service levels, using our reserves and debt strategically, prioritizing capital renewal, and then ensuring our user fees and reflect our cost recovery. So if you go to the next slide. So this was the original slide that I had presented in August, where we were like, you know, there's a lot of peaks and valleys. It didn't look like it was really sustainable. And then you hit 2035 and then it kind of just had a catch-all. So if you go to the next slide, this is what the new one looks like. So it might look at first glance like we are increasing our costs exponentially, but if you go back to the last slide, thank you, you'll see that the scale on this slide goes up to 120 million. And the next slide is actually only at 18. So I didn't include 2035 because everyone did work really diligently on making sure that what was in this asset management plan was feasible, a priority and critical. 2035 seemed to be a catch-all with all the roads and any other infrastructure left. So I think that's something we will have to tackle next year to make sure that that kind of moves forward for 2035 forward on. So I just wanted to go through what kind of really changed. So around the table, management kind of sat together and we all looked at each year from 2026 on to 2034 and to each item kind of prioritized it from 1 to 10, discussed why it was a priority, why it wasn't a priority, whether it could shift and where it could shift to, what was the end date that it had to be completed if we were going to shift it. And whether it had to use town funds or not. I think the biggest challenge was really for our environmental services team that really had to go through and look at all the roads and make sure that the roads, the water segments and everything kind of went together. So we weren't planning to do a road one year and then a couple of years later, rip it up again to do the water infrastructure. So I think that I thank you very much for doing that. And just to make sure that the number of projects we had each year were also just feasible to complete. We also looked at any infrastructure that we then, like I said, consider not to be critical and determine what could be used in different ways. So there was about 60,000 that we consider that we wouldn't use with town funding that we would actually just do through sponsorship. Another major decrease in the funding where you went from 120 million down to the 18 was that I think one of the major things that we need to consider when we're working with the town is that we do have a lot of infrastructure that is used by other municipalities. So for the asset management plan, what I ended up doing was I reduced the total anticipated amount for some of the structures to only 1/3. So if there were other municipalities that were using it and we used only 1/3, so let's say the pool was actually at $18 million in our asset management plan, I moved that down to 6. And that is to really articulate that we would need to have other funding. So either through user fees, grants, having our neighboring municipalities come through or have other private funding to be able to do that. And then you'll see some of the major increases between 2030 and 2035. So I just wanted to kind of highlight what those were in those years, just so that you could see what the anomalies were year over year. Next slide, please. So this is the original capital reserve balance based on the original asset management plan that I had brought to you in August. If you go to the next slide. So this is what it looks like now. So it kind of looks a bit more stabilized based on the changes that were made. So if we take your reserve balances and now we also include that level of our ARL and our debt capacity, we would be out of debt, being able to use debt as a way to fund our capital infrastructure by 2033. And we would have no more reserves at that point. And the slide just shows what it was at the original. So the gray line is before we moved the asset management plan to where it is now. We've moved it out a couple of years. So this is just to say that we're hoping that every year we can take a look at it. We're using different things like new revenue streams, different ideas so that we can keep on moving that mark from 2033 a bit farther out so that it does stabilize all the way across. So this was the water and sewer reserve originally. And then if you go to the next one, it didn't really change as much as that as well. So again, these are keeping in line and the financial plans are based on the projections that were made in 2025. So again, the water and sewer rates that were implied at that point, and same with in regards to taxes that were implied in 2025. So the next steps are really during our budget meeting to really talk about, how we can really look at new different revenue streams and different initiatives starting in 2026 that will actually help our capital plan moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nev. Any questions of council? Go ahead, Judy.
A couple of questions. So how many people came to coffee with you?
Around 15 people, I would say, came.
Oh, excellent. So the suggestion was made during the interviews that there needed to be innovative strategies to generate revenue and reduce costs. Did any of them have any specific suggestions as to what those might be?
That one in particular was more, I had received emails in regards to, which I believe I had forwarded on to that. So I just wanted to make sure I had also brought up that as well. So I think in regards to that one in particular, it was not any ideas that were brought forward more, but more to make sure that what is being presented and the picture that's there is being more taken seriously here when we're making decisions around the table.
So my second question is, did I understand the graph about borrowing and debt that the amount varies year by year?
Yeah, so the amount of debt that we would require would vary year by year, depending on how much capital we were actually going to be spending on. But that chart was really to show that by 2033, we would not have any more borrowing capacity.
Mhm.
And then our reserves would be pretty much depleted. And we wouldn't be able to do any of the infrastructure that has been planned beyond that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I just want to say thank you so much for integrating or embedding the whole engagement information session with our community. I think that's pivotal in terms of accountability and also education. You know, a lot of it's about educating our community. And I have two questions. My first question is, as we move through this budget process, how will we ensure that we continue to have that accountability and then engagement with the community at various levels as we go through this budget?
I think that's a great question. I think, again, the transparency and using the venues that we have to be able to make sure that we're communicating any information out to the community and just being very transparent on what our decisions are and why that we are making those decisions and understanding the impact behind those decisions that are being made and making that transparent to residents.
Thank you. And my last question is, under sponsorship, can you just elaborate on that a little bit further?
Sure, I will. You mean in regards to some of the items we took out of the
Yeah, and
asset
there was-
management plan?
there was-
Yeah, so I
yeah.
think there was a couple of things that really under the community services, things like slides and things like that, that were budgeted for or put into the asset management plan, that, you know, we had looked at and said, okay, we will do, or we'll get a new slide, but we'll look at getting sponsorship to be able to get that new slide. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I had understood that correctly. Go ahead, Councillor Bird.
Thank you. I wasn't going to ask, but it follows up from your questions, Chair, if I may. Through any of the discussions or the contacts with the community that you did, and it was 16 people, but I was there by accident. That was, and this it circles around to us, our transparency, more than education, I think it's transparency. Did anybody mention our, as a priority, our mandated priorities, common sense priorities of water, sanitation, garbage collection?
No, those
That's
didn't.
just a given.
No, but I think that's like, you know, kind of the conversation we're having. A part of it is the education piece, right? That these are the areas that are a point of focus and that even, you know, I highlighted when I was having those conversations that I took it for granted until I started working here. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, you know, going to the water plant, it's different because then you actually see it and you understand how it's working, right? But when it's your everyday and you're going to work, it's not in your venue. So I think that's what helped a lot with those discussions, was really to have those conversations. Or if someone said, you know, I'd like to have X. I'm like, okay, well, how do you want to pay for it? Like, are you willing to have an extra levy on your, you know, on your thing to have this paid for? And then it kind of changed the conversation, you know? So I think there's the transparency piece, but then there is that education piece too of how everything works together.
And I think to add to that, if you look at the the slide here that Nev reviewed already, but we asked in the survey for people to rank by importance what mattered to them in the budget process or what mattered to them in the town, and the, as noted, infrastructure, the things you mentioned, Councillor Bird led the way on what people, or what was important to residents.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I listened to CBC radio today from 4 to 5, and they had a large panel of economic experts on dissecting the budget as proposed today. One of the experts says he expects that September's GDP numbers will show Canada's now into a recession. So he's quite concerned. I don't know if many people paid attention to the budget and stuff, but it's human supports are basically going to be disappearing, and there's going to be a lot more emphasis on commercial, industrial, building up a business in Canada, make Canada more business friendly. A couple of the commentators said, despite what we think about budgets and what we want to achieve as we go forward the next couple of years, people building budgets have to be pragmatic to understand is no matter what we want to achieve and what people say we want to achieve, can the people afford to achieve our goals? And that's my biggest concern in the town of Perth, because one of my questions for you, Nev, was, did you have the opportunity to ask people their income levels who showed up to have a talk with you? Because I know at the county, it just seems to be in this past couple of years, all we're hearing about is the difficulty people in this county are having trouble making ends meet. And if you had asked me 4 or 5 years ago, would social housing, affordable housing be taking over the majority of the time at county council? I would have said, well, it's certainly showing its head, but even now in the town of Perth, we're now in the housing business. If you had said that to me 4 years ago, I said, we're probably never going to be in the housing business. I am concerned about the ability of the average family in the town of Perth to pay. I know our last treasurer used to say it was the average family income was $60,000 or something. I don't know what it is now, but it was quite an eye-opener today for me to hear from these different experts across Canada in the 1 hour show about how worried they are about for the taxpayers in Canada moving forward. And they think it's going to be worse in the next few years. So just want to, I know you're very positive and stuff. I'm very happy to see the finally we have a comment that we're not going it alone in Parks and Recreation. I certainly support, we need new facilities. But I'm also feeling that we can't do it alone, and we have to have ironclad agreements with others that'll help us do it before we move forward on those facilities.
If I can comment on that.
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect, thank you. No, I totally agree with you, and I think some of the comments that I did have weren't in regards to more of like what their income was, but having that understanding that, you know, if you're on a set income, you know, a lot of them do have an extra job on the side to do things that they would like to do, right? Like, so their income will cover their necessities, but then, you know, to have the lifestyle that you want, you have to have this extra job. And I think what's really difficult in this position is I am one of the residents as well, right? And so when I am doing, looking at the numbers for the budget, that definitely weighs on me as well, because it's myself, it's my neighbors, you know, it's everyone, but I have to put both lenses on to be like, okay, what makes most sense long-term for everyone? But it's definitely something that I considered, and you'll see when I put through the budget presentation for sure.
I'd just like to close off by saying there was a number of us that went to the AMO and the Roma conference over the last number of years. And the most recent one I was at, they made it perfectly clear. We heard it loud and clear that the municipal taxation formula was never intended to be servicing all of these social needs and housing needs and all these types of things. And now it's come to bear. And so there's going to have to be some big changes in regards to funding from the province and changes towards that formula. Thank you for your presentation. I would like for Councillor David Bird to read the motion.
Thank you,
Ned.
Chair. Moved by myself, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth receive for information the Budget Foundation's update and engagement summary as presented in Report 2025 Cal-13.1.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. And thank you, Nev, for your presentation. We're going to move on to 8.2, Report number 2025, Committee of the Whole 13-2, the 2026 proposed meeting schedule, Committee of the Whole, Council, and other committees of Council. We've all had an opportunity to look at that document. It's certainly an extensive calendar. Are there, Amanda or Tracy, do you want to make any comments in regards to it, or do we just? Okay, any questions in regards to the calendar? Being none, okay, I will have Deputy Mayor Ed McPherson move the next motion.
Moved by myself as recommended by Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of Town of Perth, number 1, approve the 2026 Meeting schedule for Committee of the Whole Council and other committees, boards, and advisory panels of council. And number 2, authorize the Director of Legislative Services clerk to amend the schedule to reflect changes in meetings as required from time to time as presented in Cal Report 13.2.
All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. We'll move on to 8.3, report number 2025, Committee of the Whole 13-3. Every holiday season since I've been on council, the BIA asked for permission to extend complimentary parking in our downtown lots on the Fridays for the month of December. So this is what this is in regards to. Are there any questions in regards to this? Being none, would you like to read the motion, Deputy Mayor?
Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Moved by myself. As recommended by Committee of the Whole, be resolved, the Council of Town of Perth passed bylaw number 3961-28, being a bylaw to amend the town's traffic and parking bylaw number 3961, as amended to allow for free complimentary parking in the downtown parking lots on the following dates: Friday, December 5th, Friday, December 12th, Friday, December 19th, Friday, December 26th, as presented report Cal 13.3.
All those in favor? Thank you, that passes. We're moving right along to 8.4, a bylaw to appoint a committee of adjustment for the period of November the 15th, 2025 to November the 14th, 2026. Would you like to comment on this, Amanda? No, no comments. Any questions? All those in favor? Oh, my apologies. I will have to have Deputy Mayor read the motion, please.
Moved by myself as recommended by Committee of the Whole, be resolved the Council of Town of Perth pass bylaw number 51XX, being a bylaw to constitute and appoint a committee of adjustment for the period of November 15th, 2025 to November 14th, 2026, as presented report Cal 13.4.
All those in favor? Thank you. That'll pass.
It doesn't say in the motion that I'm assuming that it's the same as it was this year, that all of council is the committee of adjustment. It just doesn't say that in the motion if we're intending on having clarity.
Yes, okay.
Yes, that's right. So even though the names aren't included in the motion, they are included in the bylaw. They're listed in
They're
there.
in the report. Okay. Thank you. All right, 8.5, municipal alcohol policy exemption approval request for the 2025 Downtown Heritage Perth BIA Once Upon a Christmas event. And that's on November, it's coming up, November the 22nd, 2025. That's a big event for our business improvement area. Are there any questions in regards to this? Being no questions, I would like to ask our Deputy Mayor to read the motion.
Moved by myself as recommended by Committee of the Whole, be it resolved the Council of Town of Perth pass bylaw number 4586-5, being a bylaw to provide an exemption from the municipal alcohol policy to allow the serving of alcohol on a contained section of Market Square for the Once Upon a Christmas event taking place on November 22nd, 2025, as presented in Cal Report 13.5.
All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. We're now moving along to item number 9 on our agenda, CAO and Director Departmental Updates. And before we begin this, I think we all need to put our hands together after I've read this to applaud our Director of Protective Services and Fire Chief Trevor Schoaf on his bronze medal as the top chief, and also to Jeff Dean, firefighter, 10th in the world at the FireFit World Championships in Dallas, Texas. You make us very proud. As well as does our volunteer fire department for keeping us safe here in Perth. You have all had an opportunity to read the different reports given by our CAO, our Development Services, Environmental Services, Protective Services, and Legislative Services. Is there any counselors that have questions in regards to those reports? Go ahead.
I was asked today, Grant, when's the paving and the final sidewalks going in? I get asked every week, as I'm sure you do.
Through the chair, all the fine grading took place today and paving is moving forward on Thursday and Friday. So there'll be 2 lifts of asphalt, one initial to bond with the granular, and then the second, because it's a truck route, we're required to do 2 this year and we'll do 1 next year. Immediately next week, they'll start the sidewalks.
Thank you, Grant. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
When are the sidewalks going in so the people living on Craig Street can get their cars in the driveway? Because they won't be able to with the paving.
That's right. So the sidewalks are gonna go next week. So it'll take a few days for that to set up. Ultimately, when you do concrete, you like to have 7 days for hardness, but we will put a bridge, a gravel bridge over that so you can travel over the sidewalks.
Any further questions in regards to the reports? Go ahead, Judy.
Yes, I note in the CAO's report every month that a significant portion of your time is dedicated to human resources affairs, shall we say. Does that, I haven't noticed, does that vary month by month? Is there a particular cause or just that's the way it is?
Through the chair, it varies month by month depending on what issues might arise. There's a baseline support, I guess, but there's depending, as I said, what issues arise or what transpires. It varies. It goes up and down depending on what happens. But
Any further questions? Item number 10, we do not have any new business. Item number 11, next meetings. November the 18th, 2025, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. will be a special committee of the whole meeting, review of the draft budget, chaired by Councillor David Byrd. November the 18th, 5:30 is our regular committee of the whole meeting, public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment. It will be chaired by Councillor Waterfield. December the 2nd, 2025, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is a special committee of the whole meeting, if required, to review the draft budget, update budget documents if requested. That will be chaired by Councillor Dave Byrd. And December the 2nd, our regular committee of the whole meeting at 5:30 will be chaired by Councillor Jim Bolt. We're getting lots of music in here. Do we have any questions from the media?
What the Saturday show on radio, I have Toby Shen doing 1 hour on Perth College, starts at 8 o'clock.
Thank you for that information. That'll be most interesting. Anyone else from the media online?
Olivia Barrett, Metroland Media, no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no closed session, so we are ready to adjourn. I would like to ask Councillor David Byrd to read the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Moved by myself that the committee of the whole meeting held on the 4th of November 2025 adjourn at 6:43 p.m.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff, and thank you, guests.